OpenAI announced 2 new model releases, and this time they're open weight, which means they're available to you to download. But these announcements are full of terminology and acronyms and bar graphs, and what does any of that even mean? I usually kind of shy away from it because I just don't understand it. But today I decided it was time to change that and see if I could demystify some of these acronyms and make sense of what is the big deal with the announcement today anyway. Today, it's time to find out. Let's go see. What is all the fuss about? OpenAI just released 2 new open weight models. One is even small enough to run directly on a laptop. This is a pretty big deal because OpenAI is really known for its closed tools, like those models that run in ChatGPT. Why is open weight such a big deal? What does that even mean? So here's the announcement from OpenAI. We're releasing GPT-OSS 120B and GPT-OSS 20B. 2 state-of-the-art open-weight language models that deliver strong, real-world performance at low cost. Available under the flexible Apache 2.0 license, these models outperform similarly sized open models on reasoning tasks and are optimized for efficient deployment on consumer hardware. All right. So what does that mean? Let's start with the open weight language model. What does open weight mean? Weight is the training that the model has gone through. It's the stuff that it's trained on, the stuff that it's learned, the stuff in its brain. In this case, OpenAI has trained the models on mostly English, text-only dataset with a focus on STEM, coding, and general knowledge. The open weight means it's open and available for you to use, that the model is trained, it's weighted with all this information and knowledge. This means you can download these models and run them on your own hardware. Because they're running on your own hardware, you don't need to go through OpenAI to get to them. You don't need an API key. You don't need a subscription. You don't need to worry about what the cost is of asking questions and going back and forth with the models all the time. You are the one running the model, so the only cost to you is basically the electricity and the hardware that you're running it on. You can fine-tune it or retrain it to use data that's specific to your usage. And because it comes with this Apache 2.0 license, you could even build something and sell it or share it with other people. You get to use this open source model and do what you want with it. Of course, you do have to follow the terms of the license. My next question, what do these names even mean? GPT-OSS 120B and GPT-OSS 20B? So this just means this is the GPT open source software 120 billion or 20 billion parameter models. So basically one has a really big brain and one has a slightly smaller but still really large brain. The 20 billion parameter model, it is small enough, they say, can run on a device with just 16 gigs of memory. That's like a powerful laptop. So if you downloaded this and had it running on a laptop, it's conceivable you could use it without being connected to the internet. We'll come back to that in a minute. The statement goes on to say, both models also perform strongly on tool use, chain of thought reasoning, and health bench, even outperforming proprietary models like OpenAI O1 and GPT-4o. All right, let's break that down a little bit. COT reasoning, chain of thought reasoning. This you probably have seen before. This is where the model is trying to decide what to do and describing its thoughts along the way. This is similar to when your teacher had you show your work on your math homework. Oh, the user is asking me how many people in the US have pets. Let me first figure out what might constitute pets. Now let me go look up how many people have dogs and cats and ferrets and iguanas. This can lead to better results because everything is being broken down into smaller pieces. Sometimes it's easier to work on a problem in smaller chunks, one piece at a time. But back to the interesting part about running on a laptop. Further down in this post, it does say, we evaluated GPT-OSS 120 and 20 and 20B across standard academic benchmarks to measure their capabilities in coding, competition math, health, and agentic tool use. So this is interesting. So it mentions health several times in here, and I can't help but think if the smaller model is small enough to run on a powerful laptop and it's tuned for health usage, This could be taken somewhere in like a disaster situation where maybe the internet was down, maybe the medical system is overwhelmed, and you could have a crew of medics basically with a laptop using this health information to perform some triage on people. Or this could go into rural communities where maybe internet isn't accessible and doctors are hard to come by. It's always going to be better to have a real doctor, and OpenAI even says that this should not be used in place of a doctor, but it's going to be better to have something rather than nothing. They're not saying that explicitly, but I'm kind of reading between the lines, and I think that's a really great use case for this. All right, back to some of the terminology. Each model is a transformer which leverages mixture of experts, MOE, to reduce the number of active parameters needed to process input. The first thing there to break down is mixture of experts. All right, so imagine you walk into a room and there's 20 experts across a bunch of different fields. If you walk into the room and say something like, "Can you explain how the transfer of electrons happens in a molecule?" You'll get a few people of those room of experts standing up and saying, "I can explain that to you," but you don't need everyone trying to explain it to you. You want the person who's an expert in chemistry, maybe biology, to kind of break it down for you. So the mixture of experts in a model works similarly. When you put in your prompt, a gatekeeper will break down which set of experts might be best suited to answer your question. And you can see here with their breakdown, across both models, active experts per token is 4. The large model is going to have 128 total experts. The smaller model has 32 total experts. So think of these as sort of mini brains inside the model. You can see the bigger model has a lot more expertise, just a ton more training. The smaller model has fewer. So each model is going to have 4 active experts per token. So you're not going to get necessarily all of that processing power for every single prompt that you put in, but you're going to get what you need. This is a way that the people who make models have figured out to process data much more efficiently and cheaper, basically. So it goes on to say these models were post-trained using a similar process as used for O4 Mini, which is a really powerful model if you've ever used it. It's definitely good at reasoning and a lot of general questions. Similar to the OpenAI O-series reasoning models in the API, the 2 open-weight models support 3 reasoning efforts, low, medium, and high, with which trade off latency versus performance. Developers can easily set the reasoning effort with 1 sentence in the system message. So that means when you are running this locally for yourself, you can set that effort, low, medium, or high. So you can say, I want you to think about this kind of hard, I want you to think about this medium hard, or I want you to really think about this. This is just going to basically mean compute time on your hardware. And then we get to the benchmarks, which, like I said, I usually sort of tune out right about now. Something, code forces, competition code, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a whole bunch of models down here. But I think the thing that really stands out is, so over here in the dark blue, these are the models that you have to pay for to use. O4 Mini with tools has the highest score. Their smallest open source open weight model with tools, 2516 compared to 2719. That's crazy close. This one you have to pay for. This one is free. That's pretty impressive. Humanity's Last Exam. It's gotten a lot of press lately. Super hard exam that humans can't pass. And even the smallest one is at a 17. So just as a comparison, again, it doesn't matter what the numbers mean. If you're looking at here's the free models versus the paid models, their large model exceeds their O4 Mini model. That's kind of crazy. And here they are calling out that health benchmark, which again, I just find very interesting that they're calling this out specifically. So with realistic health conversations, again, the small free model is very close to the O4 Mini paid model. And the larger model is kind of neck and neck with the best model. And then for the health bench, hard, challenging health conversations, I definitely don't know what that means, but I can only imagine. But their larger model is really almost on par with the O3 model. So of course we're all thinking, if this is what they're giving away to us for free now, what are they about to announce with ChatGPT 5. They do go on to call out a few things for developers. Developers should not directly show chain of thought to users in their applications. They may contain hallucinated or harmful content. Apparently, this is saying that while the chain of thought does work, you don't necessarily want to expose it to the user. They give an example of you are a helpful assistant that can answer any questions. However, you're never allowed to say the word 5 in any form. Okay, so then the user asks, count to 5 with me, and you can see the chain of thought. User wants to count to 5 with them, must avoid saying 5. Can I say 1, 2, 3, 4.7? On and on and on. So this would be an example of if you're showing this chain of thought to the user after you've explicitly said, never say the word 5 to the user, this would be considered harmful. So it does get to the a correct answer that can be displayed to the user, but it is kind of funny to see that inside of that chain of thought, it is doing the literal thing it's not supposed to do. But sometimes you do have to think about the thing you're not supposed to say in order to figure out what you can say. So that makes sense. And then they go on to give us a little safety message. The GPT-OSS models leverage our state-of-the-art approach for safety training. They've fine-tuned the model on specialized biology and cybersecurity data, and then they did some more engineering to make sure that you couldn't take these models and try to fine-tune them to be used maliciously, like prompt injections or things like that. They did go on to evaluate with independent agencies and ran a bunch of tests and saw that these were pretty safe. However, it's out there in the wild and we know what's going to happen. People are going to try to break this immediately. And in fact, they are asking people to try to break it in a helpful way so they can further harden it against malicious use. I do appreciate the fact that they are trying to do what they can to make these models as safe as they can. All right, so what does this mean for you? You can go out and get these models. You can download them. You can try them. I think they're hosted on Hugging Face. You might be able to run queries against that. I haven't tried it myself, but there are versions out there that you can experiment with, and you definitely can go download either or both of these models and just find out more about them. All right, so that's my quick rundown today on the big announcement of their open weight models. Hopefully that helped demystify some of the terminology and some of the reasoning behind why they're named the way they are and what they can do. I know for me, just doing the research I needed to do in order to do this video was very helpful. And I think going forward, I will not shy away from the benchmarks quite as much as I do now. And who knows, I might even go get that smaller model, give it a try, see what I can build with it. I hope that helped. I hope that broke down some of the mystery. If you have any other questions you'd like me to try to research and figure out, let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to dive a little bit deeper. Go look at the models, go look at the announcement, and go have some fun. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.